Welcome once more to Dramas, Dreams, and Drollery. I am Mark, the creator of this channel and the author of all works that appear on it. My granddaughter India serves as a technical assistant. I offer these programs to the public free of charge, but viewers should understand that I retain the copyright to all of the material. Today's story is a crime drama entitled Informal Affairs. Miss Jensen, my wife and I are having an outdoor party at our home here in Portland at 8 p.m. on Friday. A few of our friends will be there. We would be very honored to have you come as well. You may bring a friend if you wish. The dress will be casual. These were the final words Amelia Jensen heard from her boss before leaving work Monday evening. They gave her a lot to think about. In the 2 years she had served as private secretary to Yoshiro Matsuda, she had not even imagined him capable of doing anything informally. He was stereotypically old-world Japanese, a rigid, orderly workaholic who never smiled. In fact, all of the Japanese-born employees of Yokobe shipping lines seemed to be of that mold. Casual dress? Amelia couldn't picture Mr. Matsuda in anything but a business suit and tie. Naturally, she had accepted the invitation. She didn't wish to offend her boss. Moreover, she was curious to observe him outside the office. Amelia drove straight to the apartment of her fiancé, Larry Henson. A policeman, he had Mondays off in his current round of duties. Opening the door, he gave her a kiss with the passion of one who is to be married in 3 weeks. Amelia was a very attractive blonde with a well-shaped body. Though not handsome, Larry had a rugged but kind face. You won't believe this, but Mr. Matsuda invited me to a party at his home Friday evening, and I accepted. Larry gave a look of surprise, to which Amelia replied with a smile. You're invited too. His wife's going to be there and other people. How about our wedding? Asked Larry. There's still a lot to do. I know, replied Amelia. Don't worry, my family's working on it. I feel a little guilty, said Larry. With no relatives, I have no one to help in the preparation. But I do have plenty of money. Just tell me if you need anything. Amelia smiled and said, Weddings are the responsibility of the bride. My folks will take care of everything. You and I can certainly afford to take a night off. Besides, I wouldn't want to insult Mr. Matsuda. Nodding his head, Larry replied, Okay, count on me for Friday. There's one other thing. I don't want any secrets between us, Larry. So as much as I dislike worrying you, I should tell you that my old boyfriend, Vern Elmondale, called me last night. He won't give up, will he? No, but I've made it clear to him how things stand. Rest assured that nothing is going to come between us. At 8:15 p.m. on Friday, Amelia and Larry rang the doorbell at the Matsuda residence. Once inside the house, the secretary said to herself, Wouldn't you know it? She and her fiancé were the last guests to arrive. All of her other co-workers, including one non-Japanese couple, had appeared precisely at 8. It was amusing to see all those stiff executives in jeans. Dinner was odd, too. It consisted of sushi and hamburgers, a fusion cuisine designed to be casual. To Amelia, the most striking aspect of the whole affair was Suki Matsuda. What a contrast between her and her husband. At least 20 years older, he was physically unattractive, drab and formal. She, on the other hand, was perky, petite, and charismatic. Born in America, she had the energy and charm of a cheerleader. The eyes, the smile, and the dimples qualified her for a career in Hollywood. At the introduction, Suki gave such an exuberant handshake and wide grin that Larry remarked later, "Wow, she's really something." On Monday morning, it was back to the usual routine. The casual experience with his secretary had altered nothing in her boss's stiff manner. Amelia performed the normal duties. It was a typical Monday. About 10:30, a strange man entered the outer office and requested to see Mr. Matsuda. To Amelia, he seemed odd, not simply because he was unknown to her, but because there was something incorrect about his appearance. He lacked the looks of the business types who came there day after day. His voice was rough and unfriendly. "Whom shall I say wishes to see him?" "Mr. Walensky. He knows me." Amelia pushed the button on the intercom and said, "There's a Mr. Walensky to see you, sir." "Tell him to come right in," was the response. Matsuda's voice sounded a little tense. The visitor came out of the inner office just as Amelia was going to lunch. The two went downstairs in the same elevator. She walked behind him on the street and saw him enter a gray Audi with the license 102030W. Although she made no effort to remember the number, it stuck in her head. In the morning, 2 days later, the same coarse man reappeared at Amelia's desk. He barked out, "Mr. Walensky to see Mr. Matsuda." Again, her boss displayed tension as he admitted the man to his office. Amelia's curiosity surged. That evening, she requested a favor of her fiancé. "Larry, will you find out for me the name of the driver of a gray Audi, license number 102030W? Oh, and find out what kind of work he does." "Why do you want to know?" "A strange man has been coming to Mr. Matsuda's office in the last few days. Somehow, I suspect that he may be up to no good." "Well, I'm not supposed to check records of other people for personal reasons, only if it's a police matter." "Come on, Larry, please do it. I've got a hunch his actions may be criminal." "Okay, but keep it to yourself. If my superiors find out about this, I could be in big trouble." Larry called the following night. He said, "The Audi is registered to a guy named Al Walensky. I know the man. Everybody calls him Chick. He's a private investigator." "A squat man with a rough voice?" asked Amelia. "That's the guy," responded her fiancé. The secretary was asking herself, now what would Mr. Matsuda want with a private detective? Just as Chick Walensky approached her desk on Friday morning. After admitting the man to the inner office, Amelia deliberately overturned a wastebasket outside her boss's door. While picking up the trash, she listened carefully to the conversation in the room. She heard only a few words and phrases. The critical ones were, "She met him," and "He kissed her." Now Amelia understood. There was no criminal activity. Mr. Matsuda simply suspected that his wife was having an affair with another man, and apparently he was correct. The secretary felt a little embarrassed by her intrusion into the private life of her boss. She would stop at once. Just as Amelia started to rise from the floor, the office door opened and Walensky came out. Noting his secretary crouched beside the door, Matsuda gave a puzzled look, to which Amelia awkwardly responded, I was just picking up some trash." She knew her voice lacked confidence. On Saturday, Larry and Amelia drove to Multnomah Falls. Behind the wheel, Larry was making an oral checklist of wedding preparations. Okay, we got the church reserved and the minister. How about the invitations? Oh, my mom's taking care of them. And the florist? Tomorrow we'll check with... Larry cut her off. Then he said, you know what? We're being followed. Amelia frowned and said, what makes you think that? I'm a cop, he replied. I know about these things. It's a convertible. Without turning around to look, Amelia said, it's blue, isn't it? Yeah, said Larry. How'd you know? Amelia replied, it's Vern again. He drives a blue convertible. That's stalking, said Larry, and it's against the law. You can get a court order compelling him to leave you alone. Oh, I don't think that's necessary, replied Amelia. He's not going to harm me. He just can't accept the fact that I'm going to marry you. After the wedding, he'll stop. Forget him. Let's talk about our honeymoon. I'm excited about going to Tahiti, but it sounds terribly expensive. Larry put his hand over her mouth and said, I'm rich, remember? The insurance from the accident that killed my parents has left me with millions. We can go anywhere, anytime. You can quit your job if you like. They had reached the falls. The couple exited their vehicle and stood beside the road, watching the cascade of water. Larry looked to the right and spied a blue convertible parked 50 yards away. A man was sitting behind the wheel. Amelia noticed a look of anger on the face of her fiancé, and then she saw its cause. Larry, I know what you're thinking. Just ignore him and enjoy the beauty of the falls. I can't. Stay here. I'll be right back. The angry man walked rapidly toward the blue car. Amelia ran after him, pleading, Larry, come back here. Seeing Larry approach, Vern got out of his vehicle and waited. Soon they were standing face to face with Amelia at the side. Get back in your car and drive away, Larry ordered. Amelia and I love each other. We're going to be married. She's finished with you, so leave her alone. The convertible driver responded, I've got a right to be here. I came to see the falls. Well, let's see how you like this fall, said Larry. He hit Vern hard in the face, knocking him to the ground. Vern rose slowly and wiped some blood from his mouth. Without taking his eyes off Larry, he got into his car and drove away. Oh, you shouldn't have done that, Larry. There was no need. It felt good. Now maybe he'll leave you alone. Amelia spent Sunday with her mother and sister preparing for the wedding. But on the job Monday morning, her mind revisited Saturday's unpleasantness. How she regretted the incident. As a policeman, Larry should have known better than to use force that way. She hoped he hadn't hurt Vern's handsome face. While the secretary was lost in these thoughts, Chick Walensky came into the office. Moments later, Amelia ushered him into Matsuda's office. The presence of the detective shifted the woman's thinking to her employer's situation. Would he divorce his dynamic wife? And with whom was she having an affair? Half an hour later, Matsuda and Walensky emerged from the office. Miss Jensen, I'm going out for a while. If anyone calls, I'll be back by 2. After their departure, Amelia resumed her duties. To complete a report, she needed to consult some documents in the inner office. As she removed them from a file cabinet, she noticed on Matsuda's desk the memo pad he had requested during the interview with Walensky. A few notes had been scribbled on it. The words .38 caliber revolver caught her eye. Looking more closely, she saw throw body and Willamette and get rid of evidence. Amelia was shocked. This was a step-by-step plan for murder. Apparently, her boss intended to kill his wife. In her bewildered state, the secretary accidentally overturned a vase of flowers, spilling water on Matsuda's desk. She fetched paper towels and cleaned up the mess as well as possible, but a few papers that could not be discarded retained watermarks. Amelia reached her own desk just as Suki Matsuda was arriving. In her first 2 years at Yokobe Shipping Lines, she had never seen the woman, and now, in the space of a few days, she was seeing her for a second time. "So nice to see you again," Suki began. As usual, she flashed a brilliant smile. "Is my husband in?" "No, I'm sorry," replied Amelia. "He went out for a while. He told me he would return by 2 o'clock. Suki glanced at her watch. It's nearly 12, she said. "You must be going to lunch soon. Would you like to join me? It's a long drive to my home. I see no purpose in driving all that way and then returning." Amelia accepted the offer. Suki took her to a grand restaurant a few blocks away. Reading the menu made the secretary gasp. Suki smiled and said, "Don't worry, the lunch is on me. I invited you here." The conversation was very pleasant, and Suki was so disarming that Amelia began to ask questions that she never would have directed to her employer. "How did you and your husband meet, if you don't mind my asking?" "Oh, many people are curious about us. I get that question quite often. My father was born in Japan. Before coming to America, he had close ties to Yoshiro's family. Naturally, when Yoshiro was assigned to head the Portland office of Yokobe Shipping Lines, my parents invited him to our home. In time, I came to know him quite well. Eventually, my parents put pressure on me to marry him, despite the difference in our ages. I really didn't love him, but respecting one's parents is an important custom in Japanese households. We've been married 10 years now, and I think the marriage has been successful. He's a nice man and a wonderful businessman, but he works too hard, as you must know. Still, he takes good care of me. Why, just a month ago, he insisted that both of us take out multi-million-dollar life insurance policies. That way, if he dies, I'll be well provided for." As the two women were leaving the restaurant, Suki's cell phone rang. At the first words, a big smile covered her face. She asked Amelia for a moment of privacy while she took the call. The secretary diplomatically strolled some distance away and browsed a storefront window display. From that vantage point, to Amelia, Suki's face and body language suggested that she was speaking to a lover. When the call ended, the inamorata said, "I won't be going to my husband's office just now. Please tell him that I'll be there about 4 o'clock. Back in the office, Amelia fit the pieces together in her mind. Suki was caught in an arranged marriage with a husband she really didn't love. Somewhere along the line, an attractive man, probably more her age, appeared. The two began an affair. Her boss became suspicious and hired a private investigator. With his fears confirmed, he planned murder. To sweeten the revenge, he took out a huge life insurance policy on his wife. Now he was preparing to complete the plan. True to his word, Matsuda returned to the office at 2 o'clock. After a quick look at his desk, he called the secretary into the office. "Miss Jensen, were you in this room while I was out?" "Yes, sir." "Did you have an accident?" Yes, sir. I'm so sorry. I accidentally knocked over that lovely vase of flowers. I tried to clean up everything as well as possible." "Did you look at the papers on the desk?" A few of them were wet. I tried to dry them." "Thank you. That is all." Half an hour later, Matsuda called Amelia into his office again. He said, Miss Jensen, I have some very important work that must be completed by tomorrow. I don't like to request this, but I really need your assistance. You may leave the office today at 3. I would like to have you return at 7 and be prepared to work as long as required to complete this task. Will you do that for me? The word struck fear in Amelia's heart. Her boss was planning murder. He very probably just discovered that she might know his plan. Suddenly, he wanted her to work alone with him in the night. This was unprecedented, but how could she deny the request? At 3:15, she called Larry. After describing to him the day's events, she told her fiancé, "Larry, I feel certain that either my boss or Chick Walensky will try to kill me tonight. I'm scared. Please help me." Larry reached Amelia's apartment at 4:30. They had an early dinner together. Afterward, the policeman handed his fiancée a weapon. "This is the gun you requested," he said. "Keep the safety on until you need to use it. I'll be right outside your office well before 7. If Matsuda makes any threatening move toward you, scream. I'll come through the door with a gun in my hand. Don't forget to remove the safety if you have to use your weapon." "Oh, Larry, this is so scary. It might not be as simple as you picture it. Please wear a baseball cap. If the situation gets confusing and I have to shoot, I don't want to mistake you for Matsuda." "Good idea. Just try to stay calm. I've been in tough situations before. I won't let you down." Amelia reached the office exactly at 7. Her boss was already there. Before beginning to work, she set her purse right beside her. Reaching into it, she unlocked the safety. 2 hours passed uneventfully. Finally, Amelia requested a break to use the restroom. She crossed the room, purse in hand. Suddenly, the lights went out. Amelia screamed and took out her gun. A figure came crashing through the door. In the darkness, the secretary looked for a baseball cap. Then she fired 2 shots. Moments later, the lights came on again. In horror, Amelia saw blood flowing from the body of her fiancé. Larry soon died in her arms. While the distraught secretary tended to her loved one, Matsuda called 911. Lieutenant Walter Brown of the Portland Police Department appeared soon after. He was the man in charge of the investigation. A tall, portly black man in a wrinkled suit that didn't fit well. He felt cranky and tired. After a full day's work, he'd been assigned to do additional duty. But he came to life upon discovering that the deceased had been a member of his department. First, he examined the body, and then the office. Then he took a statement from Matsuda. The Japanese man explained that he and his secretary had worked peacefully for 2 hours. Suddenly, the lights went out. Miss Jensen screamed, the dead man burst through the door, and 2 shots were fired. That's all he knew. The lieutenant followed the statement with an important question. "Are you certain about the sequence of events? The lights went out first, then the scream, then the man entered the room, and then the shots." "I'm quite sure that's how it happened." Did you turn out the lights?" "No." Now it was Amelia's turn. She said that Larry Henson was her fiancé and that they were to be married in 2 weeks. About 5 o'clock, the two of them had had dinner together. During the meal, she told him that her employer had asked her to work late. When she said she was afraid to be alone with him at night, Larry gave her a gun and assured her that he would remain outside the office door. From 7 to 9, she and Matsuda had labored quietly. About 9, as she was headed for the restroom, She heard a noise outside the office. Afraid, she turned off the light to discourage an intruder. When someone burst through the door, she used the weapon given to her by her fiancé. That she had killed the man she loved was an unbelievable nightmare. She could never forgive her mistake. The coroner ruled the death an accidental homicide. Lieutenant Brown concluded the investigation within a week. Amelia missed several days of work. Larry's funeral ironically occurred on the day he had been scheduled to wed. 2 days after the funeral, Amelia drove to Multnomah Falls. En route, she made sure she wasn't being followed. At her destination, she parked beside a blue convertible. Both drivers emerged from their vehicles. Vern squeezed her tightly and kissed her hand. "It's finally over," he said. "Everything worked out exactly as we planned. What a smart girl I've got, and what a quick thinker. Using that unexpected work assignment as an opportunity to eliminate Larry was brilliant thinking, and not every woman could convince a fiancé to make her his heir before the wedding. Furthermore, not every woman would get her victim to wear a cap so that he'd be an easy target to hit. I've got me a winner." "Thanks," said Amelia. "I think you're right. Everything's going to be okay, so long as we keep a low profile for a while. To avoid suspicion, I'm going to continue working at Yokobe for another year." Amelia returned to her job. For a time, she worried that Matsuda might be suspicious of her. But the two never spoke again about that tragic night. Her fears slowly eroded. The secretary also wondered about her employer's own plan of murder. Walensky was no longer coming to the office, and there were no indications of continuing efforts to realize the plan. Amelia concluded that her killing of Larry had induced Matsuda to defer his own project. In the meantime, she had a problem with Vern. Her co-conspirator would not adhere to the original scheme. It called for them to remain apart for a year after Larry's death. But impatient Vern was perpetually calling and trying to arrange trysts. Amelia insisted that it was better to be patient. After 6 months of resistance, she gave in. One weekend, the pair slipped over the border and were married in Vancouver, Canada. 2 weeks later, Amelia quit her job at Yokobe. Henceforth, she and Vern would live the life of which they had dreamed. As she was leafing through travel brochures in the mail one afternoon, she came across a large envelope postmarked Portland. It had no return address. "Dear Miss Jensen, I am surprised to find out who you really are. I thought you were simply a reliable, hard-working secretary. It took a while to learn the truth. Now I know you to be a cold-blooded killer. I haven't contacted you until this time because I needed to gather all the evidence, and the pieces fit together. At last, I have it all. You and a former boyfriend conspired to kill Lawrence Henson, a rich policeman. After becoming engaged to Mr. Henson, you convinced him to make you his legal heir. Then you tricked him into going to the Yokobe office on the pretext that he was protecting you. In truth, he was the premeditated victim of an apparently accidental shooting. I am ready to reveal all this in a court of law and to produce some compelling evidence to support my story, evidence which I shall not discuss at this time. However, I can be persuaded to remain silent for an appropriate consideration. Bring $1 million in unmarked $20 bills to the location below and at the specified time, or I will go to the police promptly. If you comply with my instructions, you will never hear from me again." The letter was unsigned, but Amelia knew its author. It had to be Yoshiro Matsuda. He alone had such knowledge or the ability to get it. Moreover, it was his style of expression. She and Vern discussed the situation. Should they pay blackmail? With the inheritance from Larry, they could easily afford the price. But could they depend on the word of Matsuda, a man who was scheming to kill his own spouse? And what was the unrevealed evidence in his possession? The pair said simultaneously what both were thinking. We've got to kill him. Assembling $1 million in $20 bills without arousing suspicion was not an easy task. Amelia told Vern that she had an alternate plan. They would kill Matsuda without using money at all. Vern agreed. Together, they arranged the details of the murder. There remained but 1 week to prepare. The rendezvous for the payment was a secluded spot far from Portland. The time was 10 p.m. on a Saturday night. Vern suggested that Matsuda might react in a hostile manner if the two of them appeared together. Anyway, a woman alone might not seem dangerous to him. His fiancée accepted the logic. The plan called for Amelia to shoot Matsuda and race at once to the motel where Vern awaited her. Later, if necessary, Vern could testify in court that she had been with him at the motel at the time of the shooting. At 3 p.m. on Saturday afternoon, Vern checked into a motel 50 miles from the scheduled rendezvous. Amelia reached the fatal site at 9:50. Matsuda arrived promptly at 10 and got out of his car at once. The woman walked toward him with a large suitcase in her left hand. The right hand gripped a revolver in the pocket of her jacket. When they were only feet apart, Matsuda asked to see the contents of the suitcase. Amelia did not comply. She simply shot him dead. After looking about to make sure that she had left no clues, the killer returned to her car and took the road to the motel. 10 minutes later, while she was en route, police cars with sirens blaring forced her to stop. Cops with drawn guns ordered her out of the vehicle. After confiscating the murder weapon and locating the body of Matsuda, police placed Amelia in jail. Her attorney told her later that an anonymous phone call had informed police of the murder and had provided a description of the killer's car. Under pressure, Amelia confessed her role in the plot and implicated Vern Elmondale. The latter, however, denied any knowledge of the crime and supplied conclusive proof that he had been 50 miles from the site of the murder at the time of its commission. He could not understand why a former girlfriend would want to involve him in such a heinous affair. A month after the murder of Matsuda, his widow, Suki, received an insurance payment of $5 million. She called her boyfriend at once. The pair agreed to meet at an intimate restaurant in Gresham. With an expansive smile on her face, the charming woman proposed a toast. Here's to us for being so clever. With one neat trick, unwanted spouses eliminated and enormous wealth acquired. Drink up, Vern. Susie and Vern danced for a while. Then they laughed and sang while sipping champagne. On the way to their car, they talked about a vacation in Rio. Suddenly, from out of the darkness, a gunman appeared. He didn't ask for money or watches. He simply shot them dead. A customer in the parking lot wrote down the number of the killer's car, 10, 20, 30, W.